All right, so I think I'm going to get started. We have a couple people in here now. So here we go. So hi, everybody. I'm Julia with the Halifax Chamber of Commerce. I'm super excited to be here today with some lovely folks to talk about sexual harassment prevention in the workplace. So I'm Julia, like I said, and I'll be the host and really just kind of in the background and let you guys take it from there. So as an employer, you have a responsibility to maintain a workplace that is free of sexual harassment. So this webinar will be awesome for everybody to learn. Something to note is that sexual harassment is really gender neutral. So it can happen, men can harass women and women can harass men within the workplace. And our guests today will share their knowledge and expertise on workplace harassment prevention, covering things like compassionate listening, art therapy, bystander training, and lots more. So we have a number of questions already predetermined, but we encourage everyone to ask questions in the Q&A or even just throughout the webinar, put it in the chat box there, and we'll get to it towards the end. So I'm just going to introduce each speaker here today, and then we'll get started with Heather being the first speaker. So Shyla LeBlanc, she's the founder of Restorative Approach. Shyla, if you want to give a wave to everybody. And then Evie Dunville, which Evie Dunville is from Art Therapy, which is really cool. I know someone that does art therapy, my roommate actually, and it's the first time I've heard of it. So I'm really excited to hear from you, Evie, as well. Nicole Watkins Campbell, she's a freelance editor and plain language consultant. So wave to everybody, Nicole, and just we're excited to hear about your approaches as well. Heather B. Brett Romley, who is an executive director at LISNS, Legal Information Society of Nova Scotia, which is really cool as well. And Michaela Jodry, PR coordinator from LISNS as well. So welcome everybody. We're really excited to get started. We have a few more people on the call, which is awesome. So we're going to get started. Heather, if you want to take it away.
And thank you so much, Julia, and good morning. We're delighted to have this opportunity to present as part of the Chamber's Business Support Series. And it's Listens, Legal Information Society of Nova Scotia. I didn't get that when I was hired at Listens in 2014, but we continue to promote it. And we're here to help Nova Scotians through free, high quality public legal information and resources. And we're very proud to be leading this workplace sexual harassment project, a 5-year initiative funded by the federal government. And it's in partnership with the Human Rights Commission. And just want to give a shout out to Wayne McKay, who's an internationally respected expert in human rights and is our project advisor and a big supporter of this work. So through this initiative, we are aiming to help employers make it easy to value your most important resources, being your people. And everything that we have developed is intended to make this, when I say as easy as possible, to share it as broadly as possible throughout organizations. And I come from an HR background, and I know how difficult managers and supervisors in particular can find having discussions of any sort of personal nature. And that's where we have developed the Safe at Work app to basically provide supports and tools that just by virtue of a supervisor or manager sharing it with employees is sending a message to employees that we care enough about you to make you aware that these are resources that may be helpful to you or to someone you know, and that you can use the resources as a supervisor, manager, or HR director in a way to encourage discussions that aren't necessarily about problems that exist in your organization, but can be discussions around, well, how can we make things better? Like, what are experiences people may have had dealing with customers? And this is true whether people are working in manufacturing facilities, in corporate office environments. Sexual harassment is something that pervades all workplaces at all levels, and it affects people young and old. And that's why it's really, really important that especially in this day and age, when there is a heightened awareness around all the challenges people are facing with mental health, with the COVID pandemic, with domestic abuse and family violence numbers rising, that workplaces are being challenged on recruitment, retention, and to permit issues of this nature to go unaddressed is in effect like encouraging damaging resources, assets of an organization. And no one would say that that should be permitted. So when we're talking about it being people as those most important resources, it's absolutely critical that organizations have to think about how they can be there and sending a message of we care, but we care in a way that's on your terms so that you can let us know what you need. And so I'm really hoping that employers will take away from this how easy it is to let employees know you care. You don't have to have an expensive EAP program, that this is something that's been built to be for everybody, and it is free and it's private and confidential. And that's one other comment I'll make, that I know that often employees can feel suspicious around EAP provided programs, that somehow it gets back to the employer. So this is just another complementary tool in the toolbox. And so just to set up the discussion, the presentations that you're going to have on the resources that we're providing. Well, first of all, we've started with a best practices toolkit, and small businesses have been particularly helpful in us developing this, where often they don't have an HR capacity. And our point was to develop a standardized policy that hits all the high points of legal obligations, so that there's a framework that an organization can easily put their name on the policy, and they have a process in place for helping people bring forward issues. And it's proactive insofar as there are checklists and an ability to look at how you're communicating, but it's not onerous, it's not time intensive, and it's as simple as putting an organization's name on a policy and making sure that you've read that policy, and that you internally, whether you're a 2-person operation or a 1,000+ operation, that you have an understanding of how you are going to manage issues if they are raised. And now we'll move into the app. And the app is about being proactive. So the purpose around sharing the Safe at Work app resources is to get education, to get awareness, so that people's behaviors do not reach the point of creating intimidating, disrespectful workplaces. And that's why this is a really great preventative approach. And so we're here to champion about how you can use it effectively. And I'm really delighted to hand it over to Nicole, who is a communications expert. She has developed the Bystander Training, and it's received rave reviews. So really delighted for her to get into the details of that. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I was part of a team that researched and wrote 8 videos on workplace sexual harassment. These videos form the basis of the training program that the Legal Information Society is providing. I would say there are 3 things that as a team we want employers and employees to remember. And they're that sexual harassment, as Heather said, is a problem in most workplaces, that it costs organizations in lost productivity and employee turnover, as well as hurting employees and hurting their workplace culture. And workplaces can take steps to prevent or reduce harassment and to make their workplaces more productive. And today I'm going to focus on what the team learned in our research and about the training that we created. So as Heather said, it's prevalent. Sexual harassment is prevalent in workplaces of all types. It doesn't just affect women, but in recent research, more than half of working women said that at some point in their careers, they had taken some action to avoid sexual harassment. But it affects women, it affects men, and it affects people who don't identify as either women or men. They're somewhere else on that gender binary, that gender spectrum. And the types of workplaces that are affected are everything: fish plants, coffee shops, construction sites, corporate offices, professional firms, not-for-profits, every kind of workplace has had this problem. Some sexual harassment stories become big news. Sometimes they lead to lawsuits. But actually, in most situations, neither of those things happen. Most companies face about 4 different types of costs associated with sexual harassment: lost productivity, lost employees, costs associated with recruiting new employees and hiring and training them, and loss of reputation. So employers lose productivity in 2 ways. First, employees who feel like they're being harassed might call in sick to avoid their harasser. When they are at work, they can be so upset and distracted that they're actually not as effective as they could be. So those are some of the lost productivity. Second, anyone else in the workplace who sees or hears about the harassment is also affected by it. And this is an effect we don't normally think of. But in fact, if there's sexual harassment in a workplace, it can lead to an undercurrent of tension at work. Sometimes employees who are aware of the situation will actually take sides, and then there'll be disagreements over that. But a lot of other employees will just be worried about how the harassment situation is going to end up affecting them and impacting their jobs. But either way, the people at work are no longer focused on getting work done. They're thinking about something else altogether. Employees who feel that they have no options to avoid their harasser will leave their job if they can. This is a very common outcome of sexual harassment. So the employer loses a quality employee, and whatever knowledge or good relationships they've built, that's all gone. That leads to the next cost, which is the cost of recruiting a new employee and training them and bringing them up to speed. And of course, there's lost productivity until a new employee is fully up to speed on a job. And then the last cost is loss of reputation. If a harassment story becomes public, either in the news or even just through whisper campaigns in small communities, the employer loses face in the community. And that has all kinds of ramifications because your reputation is really important as you work in a community of any size. This is also a different kind of risk, and it's a significant one, and Heather alluded to it. After 20 months of working from home or having been laid off and brought back and laid off again, a lot of employees are rethinking how much they value their workplaces. And with stories of sexual harassment still being fairly prevalent in the news, that's just another layer. So sexual harassment is widely prevalent and it can cost employers quite deeply. We also learned that effective work by employers can make a huge difference. And Heather touched on those, and they're part of the package: having the right policy, communicating with employees about those policies, and offering training that encourages employees to look out for each other. Those are the things that make the biggest difference. It doesn't have to be complicated. A workplace culture that emphasizes respect and communication is the most important part. And that's true for any kind of aspect of the workplace. If you have a basic foundation of respect and communication, you'll have a happier, more productive workplace. Part of the communication is training, and that's where this training session comes in. So what we created were 8 videos. They are 1 to 2 minutes long, and they focus on 1 or 2 topics. We talk about what sexual harassment is, the role of power in a workplace, and how that affects all our behaviors, including how it can lead to harassment in some situations. We also talk about how every kind of workplace is a kind of community, and how we can have safer workplaces, how employers and employees can both work together to have safer workplaces. We have to be aware as individuals of what's going on in our workplaces. And that's the topic of one of the videos. And we also talk about how employers can develop a workplace culture and policies to make the workplaces better places. So in addition to having the information and the tools, we have a short video that kind of tells you a little bit about how to make that all work together. As Heather said, the videos are available in an online learning system. And that means that in addition to the videos, we also have some questions that employees or anyone visiting the site can answer. And that question section just sort of helps to keep the learning. It helps to make it stick. When people have had a chance to think about what they've seen, they remember it better later on. Of course, the benefit to employers is free training for your employees, and training that can give them a certificate of completion after they've watched the videos and answered the questions, if that's something an employer wants to put into place. Many workplaces don't have sexual harassment policies, but as I think Julia said, having a sexual harassment policy is a basic business responsibility. It's a little like locking the door on your way out at night. Job one is writing the policy. Job two is having the conversation with your employees. And it's important to talk with them, not just once, but from time to time. Keep the conversation going. Bring new employees into the conversation when they join the workplace. And then, of course, job three is offering training to your employees. And as Heather said, offering that training shows your commitment to your workplace, that you have a commitment to a workplace that's free of harassment. It tells employees who might give their coworkers a hard time that it won't be okay if they do that. It tells other employees that it's okay to stand up for someone if they're being hurt at work. And it tells everyone that if they're being hurt at work, their employer will help to make things right. This is a good place for businesses to be in the long run, because if something goes wrong in this way, if you have a situation of harassment in your workplace, it can affect your workplace for years. That is all I wanted to say about the training session. And I will just turn it over now to Evie to talk about art therapy. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so hello, I'm Evie Denville, and I'm an art therapist supporting the Safe at Work program. I would like to spend my time with you today giving an overview of what art therapy is and how the practice supports individuals in their journey to process and heal from the experiences that have been feeling stuck, and what to expect from an art therapy session through Safe at Work. Art therapy is helping individuals of all ages and abilities explore their thoughts, feelings, and emotions, utilizing a variety of multisensory art materials and techniques. Art therapy is a client-led approach, focused on creating art as a symbolic representation of lived experience. No art experience is required to create meaningful representations of our emotional, social, or physical challenges. To quote Elizabeth Braun, art is not always about pretty things. It's about who we are, what has happened to us, and how our lives are affected. And so the therapeutic space is enhanced by layered communication. It is not the sole focus or purpose. The expectation is not solely on the individual, which may relieve some of the pressure that may prevent people from seeking support. There is space for quiet, and the art created may stimulate conversation. Like diaries, the art also provides a record of our experience, which is often not accessible in talk therapy. The visual element of the art creates a dynamic where we are both seen and heard, allowing those in art therapy to communicate on a nonverbal and sensory level, which provides access to the deepest parts of us where no words exist. Repressed and even pre-verbal trauma can be explored while also providing language for the experiences we cannot easily describe. The intention is not to place blame, but to get a handle on our unique experiences. By exploring through the art process, we can begin to build a language and understanding around it. Often, we feel emotions as physical or bodily sensations. These bodily sensations may be challenging to put into words, and the words that we come up with do not seem to do them justice. Our memories are stored in our body as images, and so our memories or feelings, emotions, and thoughts are experienced in our minds as images and pictures, not words. To access them, we must speak in their language, that is, through imagery. Making art is a wonderful way to access them in a safe and mindful way. Creative expression can calm the body and the mind. This self-regulation enables us to focus, improving our emotional state and increasing our capacity to move through the emotions and use that to integrate our learning. By becoming present in the space held by a trained professional and trusting in this process, our internal trauma is slowly and safely released and can be explored when we are ready. The visual record allows us to look back at the art created when we are prepared to address recurring themes. Storytelling and creating a narrative around the art allows us to build self-awareness, emotional language, and reframe our experience as we create without judgment or comparison. Art therapy is based in relationship, whether one-on-one or in a group setting, just as human growth and development are fostered in a relational environment. Creative expression on its own can be a release, but it is not a guaranteed cure. Often on our own, we can become lost in the release of emotions, unsure how to navigate and ultimately regulate them. Having a trained professional, one that remains client-focused, helps us find our way through them. Because art therapy is a mindful, intentional practice held by a trained therapist, we are safe to release, to let go, and become grounded in our body, sinking into a deeper sense of presence and awareness. As the Listen staff observed during their experience with art therapy, the confidential space held in the group sessions enables a shared experience while also allowing for individual knowledge without the obligation to expose the personal process with the entire group. This empowered them to intentionally consider their experience while protecting their personal privacy. At no time is there an expectation to share. Participation is encouraged at the level that each individual feels comfortable with. For the most part, we are our own worst critics and often judge ourselves more harshly than we would another. When we see our experience reflected in the art, it can increase our understanding of our own experience as well as our capacity for self-empathy. It is only when we look through the eye, it is only when we look with the eyes of love that we see as the painter sees, by Henry Miller. Like Kintsukuroi, the Japanese ceramic art, this framework is based on the intrinsic value of reparation and integration, not denying the fragments of a damaged self. Instead, we befriend our shadows and celebrate the strength it takes to put the pieces of our broken self back together, understanding that we are more beautiful for having been rebuilt. Often, self-care and mental health are discussed in terms of mindfulness and resiliency. I believe to be resilient, we must have the capacity to ride the ebbs and flows of our daily lives, knowing when to continue forward and when to take a break to recharge. We cannot pour from an empty cup. Mindfulness is very hard to achieve when our body is actively experiencing stress and our physiological responses to that stress are cutting off access to the rationalizing parts of our brain. For a lot of the individuals that I work with, the idea of mindfulness seems like a privileged term. Their lives have created barriers, impeding their ability to reach the state of regulation and vulnerability that is required to practice intentional mindfulness. It can still become a learned behavior despite these environmental barriers, but it may require more effort to reach that state of pause. To be mindful, we must believe, we must know that we are safe or that we can reach safety. And this often requires the support of others, which is why resilience and attachment must be fostered in relationships that we can rely on, avoiding uncompromising independence. Exposure to caring environments can create the safety required for us to be vulnerable and to ask for help. This is where businesses can play a vital role. To repeat myself, attachment is a key part of resilience. Feeling a connection to someone or something gives us a sense of purpose. This connection can be with friends, family, and even work, with our coworkers and in the institution itself. This attachment can support and enable growth, or it can erode our resilience when it is misplaced. Employers know how important it is to support the well-being and mental health of staff, but how to facilitate that support may seem abstract and hard to define. Maintaining physical health can be more tangible, like encouraging physical activity. If we expand on this idea of supporting and maintaining physical health, we can see how supporting mental health is just as vital. If we saw a coworker or employee trying to work without treating a broken arm, we would want to support and encourage them to heal that break. Our brains and our mental health should be accorded that same care. Providing our coworkers and staff with the added level of support encourages their ability to build capacity within the workplace. As we actively participate in creating, we may experience a transformative and empowering sense of increased optimism, as well as improved mood, socialization, and confidence. Maya Angelou gave words to this empowering idea of transformation. We delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve that beauty. So what to expect? Businesses can encourage their staff, or individuals may self-identify their interest in participating in art therapy through the Safe at Work or through discussion with the compassionate listeners. They may discover that a session will be valuable to them. They would then have a one-on-one discussion with myself about what has brought them to seek the support, as well as what to expect in the group process. The current group format is a 2-hour virtual session. We would begin by grounding with some discussion around the building of capacity with mindful intention, followed by a guided art process, and ending with the space to discuss the experience should they wish. Participants may work with whatever materials they have on hand, and I can make recommendations for supplies for those who would like the direction. All experiences are confidential. So that's what I'm going to say, and I'm going to now hand it over to Shyla, who will introduce you to compassionate listening.
Yeah, thanks so much, Evie. And we were so fortunate to be able to do an art therapy session as a team with Listens recently, and it was really impactful and meaningful to be able to do it. And it was my first time participating, and I'm just really excited that that's something that we're able to offer. I want to share more about our compassionate listening process that's available to everyone and why this matters and why I'm excited about it. So my name is Shyla LeBlanc. I'm a queer settler, a treaty land inhabitant here in Chibuktuk in Halifax, and I founded Restorative Approach, which does conflict resolution and education from the restorative lens. But I've also been doing a lot of work with Legal Information Society, and I've been really loving the various projects I'm participating in, and this is certainly one of them. So just to start, I'll share a bit about what compassionate listening actually is and what this means in the workplace. So our compassionate listening line is something that we've developed now in partnership with Shelburne Warm Line, which is with the Shelburne County Mental Health and Wellness Association. And what this is an anonymous place for folks to call in to receive compassionate listening support. So this is a great space for folks who just need a gentle ear, who can hold space and help people feel seen and heard in a way that's not working to kind of fix or take any action. It's just a spacious opportunity for people to feel connection to someone else, especially if they're going through a difficult period. And all the folks who are listening, who are on the line, are peers, community workers who have experience working in these types of conversations. And the key detail is that folks are all trained in how to be trauma informed. And trauma informed care is gaining a lot of awareness. There's a lot more focus on being trauma informed, and that's so important. I'm really excited that this is kind of gaining more traction in the mainstream. It is so vital to be trauma informed in any service that we're providing. Anything can be trauma informed. And so when people call in to get compassionate listening support, it's a chance to reflect, to explore, and this all happens anonymously. So I think that that's a really key detail of this service, is that, you know, there's no kind of revealing information, and people can just call in and share whatever they like without that fear of being identified. And we're also thankful for this service to be partnered with Simplycast, which allows us to offer encrypted service, which means that it's digitally anonymous as well. And so for folks who are managers, leaders, or in HR, as Heather was sharing at the offset, offering this service is a really easy way to say, we care about you. I think especially in 2021, conflict is inevitable. And in this moment in history, people are carrying a lot of stress. I think there's a lot going on personally and professionally through COVID and everything else going on. It's a difficult time. And often, in the workplace, people might be going through some difficult things, and that might be showing up in terms of engagement or performance when we're in the workplace. And I do a lot of conflict mediation and resolution work in the restorative lens. And I appreciate, I think more than most, that having good conversations and navigating difficult times in good ways, it's a real skill. It's an area of expertise. And I think it can be difficult in positions of leadership to know how to have those difficult conversations, especially when we might maybe have the sense that someone's struggling, but we're not sure of the details and there's not really an open kind of dialogue there. You know, I think it can be really difficult to know how to respond, but it's so important and so meaningful to be in a position of power and to really signal clearly that, hey, you know, we care about you, your mental health is important, and there are some services and supports for you, and here's what they are. So in terms of the compassionate listening line, it can be shared proactively. And just as Nicole was sharing, it's something to draw attention to regularly. So you can certainly, from time to time, share with your team that this is something that exists. And it's also something that can be offered reactively. So, you know, perhaps there's an awareness of some difficulties going on, or perhaps even just the sense, like I definitely have had these kind of moments with people where I'm not sure what's going on, but I can tell something's different, that something has kind of changed. And in those kind of reactive moments, it's still a great way to say, hey, you know, are you interested in getting any support? Would you be open to me sending you some information about this compassionate listening line? It's free to use. It's totally anonymous, disconnected from this workplace, but something that's available to everyone. That can be such a powerful message to send. And, you know, as we've been kind of saying, it is best practice in management to make sure that people feel safe in the workplace, that they're free of any kind of harassment behavior. And so this can be one way to make sure that people feel held. And it's, as Heather said, so easy. It's very easy to share this resource. It doesn't require a lot of time. And this act of sharing support is one that builds trust, because the message that's being sent is that we take this seriously. We actually do have investment and concern for who you are as a person. I think increasingly, especially in this work from home life, we're recognizing that the kind of personal, professional boundaries, I think we really need to challenge those. I think we show up into the workplace as whole individuals, and we must care for ourselves as whole individuals, which includes our mind, body, and spirit. And so having that anonymous person to speak to about what's going on can be so impactful. So to understand kind of where this fits, this is not at all to replace workplaces that have EAP services, but it's to fill gaps for a lot of employers who don't. We know that there are kind of many organizations and teams and spaces that don't have a dedicated EAP service for people. And this is one that's available to anyone. And it's for folks who might be struggling with workplace sexual harassment. It might be for folks who are, you know, struggling with the impact of legal processes. It's very open and spacious in terms of what might be going on, but it's basically a way for folks to call in and in a kind of, you know, particular parameter of time, just speak with someone and have that chance to feel safe, seen and heard in what they're going through. So one example recently that I saw was I was working through a conflict case, and there was a particular member of a team, and he was really shifting in terms of his engagement. There was kind of a withdrawal and distraction that had been noticed by leaders, but no one had kind of checked in with this individual. And so when I was working with him, I came to realize that he was supporting his grandfather through a palliative situation and had been kind of at the bedside for this transition for a lot of time. And the conflict that he was going through in the workplace was actually negatively impacting his ability to be there with his family. But in this context, no one had really checked in with him, and he hadn't been aware of any kind of supports for what he was going through. And so this created a lot of kind of negative emotional impact on him. And he was, I think, resentful toward his team that he was, you know, kind of navigating this and also going into work and dealing with some serious conflict. And having that chance for him to be heard, for him to receive that kind of compassionate listening and care was really impactful for him. And the thing that I just kept thinking about as I was working on this recently was what would have changed if he had been able to receive that support earlier on, and if there had been better conversations in that. And so in that particular instance, the chance for him to receive that care did mean a lot. And it really helped kind of restore some of the things going on in the workplace. So it can have really profound impact to have these types of conversations. And again, it's something that not everyone is particularly trained in. It's, again, an area of expertise to understand how to listen. We all, I think, have great intentions to listen and, respond in good ways, but the impact of that can vary in terms of how to really meaningfully, compassionately listen. It's a skill. It's something we must practice and learn and train in over time. And so the beauty is, again, you don't need to have the skill set. There's now a service that offers that. And so, this can be something that, again, proactively you can share and reactively you can share. I'll tell you the number, but you can access this on our website as well. It's 927-6546. And again, on our website, you can check that out. We would recommend sending an email to the team, just outlining, hey, this exists. We want you to know about it. And just a couple other things I just want to quickly note is that we will be imminently here launching a short 30-minute webinar on trauma-informed care. I'm offering that webinar with Legal Information Society, and it's for anyone who wants to just understand what that means. So if you've heard the term kind of trauma-informed care, but aren't familiar with what that is, this is a really short little snippet, 30 minutes, to just give you a quick kind of crash course in what that means. So that will be available on our learning system as well. And the final thing I'll say before I hand it over to Michaela is just, before I started working with Legal Info, I wasn't familiar with all the different things available through Legal Info. But if you haven't been to our website, I highly recommend it. There's tons of resources, amazing resources. Obviously, the sexual harassment project here, Safe at Work, is filled with huge amounts of information and really easy to access supports and tools. But there's also a wealth of other things in terms of free legal information. So I would highly recommend just going to legalinfo.org and seeing what is available there. So very open to any questions about what compassionate listening looks like. And I'll just hand it over to Michaela. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Shyla. All right. So to close up, as we enter year 4 of our 5-year grant, Listens continues to develop further content and resources to really help support employers in tackling workplace sexual harassment. While we raise awareness of its implications, we continue to gather feedback from employers, employees, and community members on the best ways forward and what tools they'd like to see implemented in their workspaces for these issues. We recognize that not every workspace has a human resources department, which is where these tools help fill the gap. These tools provide a simple, effective, and seamless way for managers and occupational health and safety committees to build safe workspaces for all employees. We all have a role to play in creating safe and healthy, respectful work environments. And it starts with having the right tools in place to not only handle these situations, but to create an environment where these conversations can be comfortably had. Let's all make Nova Scotia harassment free.
Amazing.
Pass it over to the host.
Perfect. I think you just muted yourself there, Michaela, but no worries.
I think I did.
No worries at all. Well, thank you so much, everybody. That's a lot of information to digest, and I'm the type of person that loves to reflect. So I know for me, I'll be thinking about all of your points today, and I might even rewatch the video and send it to some friends and whatnot as well within the network. So we just have some questions as well. So I'm going to go over those right now. And, whoever feels most comfortable answering, please just kind of take the board, or if you want to contribute and build off someone else's answer, that's okay too. So it's a really awesome question. So what is my first step if I'm feeling sexually harassed at work?
May I, sorry, in terms of us all kind of thinking. So the first thing would be to find out if there is a policy that your that your employer has in place. That really is the starting point to see if there is a process that's outlined. The second thing would be to basically do your own assessment of the situation to make sure that you document what it is that you're experiencing, to put the date down, like who's been involved and what it is that has occurred that has made you feel uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And what certainly would be suggested would be to take a look at the short videos that we've prepared, because they help to reinforce what is considered to be acceptable and unacceptable behavior. So it's not in any way to question what a person is feeling and experiencing, but that can be a helpful validation, which an employee can then use to either share with a group of employees, and a person who's engaging in that conduct may be part of that group, and to share with them and say, it's really great that our employers are committed to a respectful workplace. I looked at these videos and I really encourage everyone to take a look at them. And it depends upon what a person's comfortable with in terms of how they move forward. Normally, we would encourage a person, if they feel that it's safe, to let a person know who's acting inappropriately at the time. That's not appropriate. If it's a comment or some sort of a movement or touch or what have you, but to call it out right at the time and to document it accordingly. But if you don't feel safe, and oftentimes people won't feel safe, and if it's somebody they report to, they may be concerned about their job security, to know if there is a safe person to speak with, such as a supervisor, an HR person, even another coworker, to find out if perhaps other people are having similar experiences. And in that way, there can be strength in numbers. We are offering through our app a free legal advice service. And our idea, as anybody who kind of keeps track of these issues knows, very few people want to go to court on these issues. Very few people do go to court on these issues. And it's not just because the cases are hard, but it's because most people want to work in their workplaces and not have that harassing conduct. They want to be working where they're working, but they want to be treated respectfully. So in terms of an employer's orientation, it should really be to encourage this discussion. And that's where we recommend sharing these videos as a kind of starting point for managers or whoever it is who has some kind of authority or engagement with employees, to say, look, we really want to make sure that we're doing the best we can to help people feel supported and respected. So take a look at these videos and let's have a chat. Like, let us know, is there something that we're missing here? You know, do people feel safe to talk about it? Like, we really value you and we want you to know that you can let us know. So I'm sorry, that's rather a long answer, but I think that that's very, very important, because that's a very practical issue, and there isn't necessarily a right answer, but to do nothing is the wrong answer. There are options, and that's the key, that employees or a person should know what those options are. And that also extends to customers and people who are interacting with organizations as well, because there are obligations to those who are being served. So it goes, you might say, in a variety of ways. And that's why employers really should be looking at this idea of, how do we treat people? How do we treat people and treat people in a respectful way, that they feel like they're supported, that they want to come back to do business here, that they want to engage with us and interact with us, and that they want to recommend us as a great place to work.
I love that. I was just going to say, it sounds like it's, you have to be both equal participants and communicating the harassment policy and whatnot as well, during orientation, kind of going over that as an employer, but as an employee, being aware of what parameters you have, as well as who you can speak to. A lot of times I feel like it's a taboo topic to talk about, and I love your answer, and you hit it all, nail on the head with all of it.
Well, and Julie, if I might just make an additional comment, that this is really what it comes back often to, is having just good practices that we know so many organizations, and government included, don't do orientation. Like employees are basically just thrust into something. They have no idea what the rules are. All they know is they're going to get a paycheck. And so this becomes really difficult because it puts an awful lot on a supervisor or whoever is overseeing somebody to then be kind of trying to fill in the gaps and do the right thing. And chances are that person hasn't been trained on how to manage. And if you're in a unionized work environment, that can be very difficult because supervisors can often be in the bargaining unit, and unions can find it very difficult to deal with these issues vis-a-vis different union members. So there are a whole bunch of very complicated issues, but it's no reason for employers not to turn their attention to how are they going to manage it, and to having some basic good communication practices and expectations set at the outset is really critical. And I think increasingly, especially with young people, and I'm going to mention, we've heard from different university students, we have many who work with us in different initiatives. And a young man from Jordan working here at Dell, and went to work at a restaurant, and the maitre d' hit on him and basically told him he wouldn't be working in the hospitality industry if he didn't, kind of do what was being asked of him, which was completely inappropriate and totally sexual harassment. And the student, he just said, "Oh, I wasn't going to put up with any of that," and he left. But it definitely, even though he was kind of brushing it off, it did bother him a lot. He had every right to have it bother him, but that feeling of being disempowered and then potentially having a reputation, issue with in you might say a whole industry, and the perceptions of those who are not in power. And that's why it's so important that employers, they really need to think about that. And I mean, that's just one example, but thinking of how many employers are desperately trying to find people to do work in this day and age. And then how are you going to keep them if you're basically treating them in this disrespectful way, or you are basically saying we don't care by virtue of putting people in these decision-making roles where they can hurt people and do it willfully and not be held responsible. So performance management is really still a key part of good, you might say, of good organizations. So you have to have the policies, but you have to have people who are willing to basically stand up for what is right, and have those standards, though, specified from a policy perspective.
I love all of that. That is such a good takeaway, not only for employers, but for employees. And like I said, coming back to, who you can reach out to, and, really being diligent in understanding the workplace that you're going into as well as an employee is really important too.
And I'll just quickly add, for folks who experience sexual harassment, I think it's really important to just say again that everyone experiences sexual harassment differently. So depending on people's age, race, all of the kind of protected characteristics. So I think for people experiencing it, the other key question is to really check in and ask ourselves, what do I need to feel safe at this time? That should really be the governing question in terms of seeking support, in terms of, sharing it in safe spaces. We know that people do have better healing outcomes if they share the difficulties that they're going through in places that are safe and trusted. So not just sharing with anyone, but in those places that are there and can hold that information in a good way. So that's why I think the kind of compassionate listening, the art therapy, all of these different pieces can be a piece of someone's journey to recover from that kind of harm, because it is very harmful and it does have profound ripples outward in negative ways in people's personal lives and in all kinds of often unexpected kind of symptoms and harms. So I think, people asking themselves, what do I need, should be the governing question as people move forward.
Beautiful. I love that extension. And I know that you guys both kind of touched on it, but the next question would be, what if my workplace doesn't have an HR department where I can file a sexual harassment statement or whatnot? What does an employee do then?
sorry, I wasn't sure, Nicole, if you might want to take that or not. Certainly, you then can move to, if in fact there is no internal process, that doesn't mean that you cannot file a complaint with your organization, basically bringing it to the attention of the employer or a senior manager, putting it in writing. So I think that that's really important. The fact that a company doesn't have a policy doesn't mean that there isn't some way for an employee to formally make the employer aware that this is an issue or that they're experiencing it. But they then, of course, can go to the Human Rights Commission to file a complaint. It's arguable that under the occupational health and safety legislation, it could be construed as an occupational health and safety hazard. And that's where, if I might say, coming back to, like, we understand that employers don't want to promote, you might say, litigation, but our free legal advice service is intended to give people information to help them understand their situation. And people may often perceive that they have a right to do something which in fact doesn't exist legally. I mean, and so this is the other thing. It's not to say that there's never a right to be harassed or sexually harassed, what have you, but in terms of remedy, the legal remedy may not be the remedy that a person's looking for. So this is the whole thing, getting good information, good quality information. And that's where at Listens, we have our free helpline as well. So they're qualified lawyers who provide legal information assistance and can answer exactly that kind of question. We have live chat and you can send email questions at legalinfo.org, and everything is private and confidential. So I think that the key is there's always something that can be done. It's not a guarantee that you're going to get what you hope is the outcome, but you will definitely be able to bring your issue forward and demand that there be some examination and some resolution.
Okay. Perfect.
I will also just jump in, not that we're looking to encourage employers or employees to go to litigation, but two other opportunities that they have if their employer doesn't have a policy or doesn't seem to have a process or isn't able or willing to deal with a concern. Some employees have the option of going through their union to deal with it. And where they don't have unions, I believe, Heather, correct me if I'm wrong, that the Human Rights Commission will hear sexual harassment complaints.
And exactly, that's what I was just going to say. Again, it often is like circumstance specific. So it's just in terms of, you might say, fitting into those criteria, but there always are options. That's the whole thing about it. And so knowing where to get help to get that quality information. And the other point would be that a person, probably one of the most important things they need to do is document, because it's so easy for people to forget details around the date, the time, the people or the person involved, like who may have observed it. Often there's nobody, but having that detailed information is really critical, because as you proceed with an issue, and if you find that you may need to go in a more formal route to get some resolution, then that becomes part of building the case and having, you might say, evidence that is viewed as kind of supporting your side of the story, which is what really at the end of the day, this is all about, people telling their stories. And if it goes to court, a judge chooses whose version is more credible than not. So having good information and ultimately our point with the chamber is to really encourage businesses and employers to not reach that point, like to make sure that employees feel comfortable that they can raise these issues, and that often that it's the opportunity to let someone know, like, that's not acceptable. Like, it's important that you're aware. Often people who engage in some of these behaviors may not even be aware. It doesn't make it okay, but that in fact it can be resolved by bringing notice, and often a number of people will be thanking them for that, because people who engage in this conduct, they rarely are affecting one person, and one person's too many, but it tends to be a pattern of conduct that affects across an organization, and that creates that fear and that uncertainty. And so, and just in terms of coming back to the proactive organization, that's where we'd really like to suggest to like managers or supervisors to even think about scheduling a group session with Abby. That can be such a show of kind of respect and confidence to say, we're not asking anybody to get personal or detailed their personal situations, but we care about you enough that we as a group want to come together to have the opportunity to kind of respect each other by virtue of being in a space where we can reflect, and in a sense, sending a message to everybody, that's okay. Like, that's the kind of organization we are. We care about people at all levels. And so that's where we want to help kind of put a very practical frame around the services we're offering, so that managers and supervisors and employers can better understand just what it is, that it's not this idea of, oh, you know, people are just kind of drawing and and feeling good, not to undermine, but the fact is that it is a very meaningful gesture of respect, which can prove to be so helpful in ways that people would never anticipate. And at Listens, we did that with our group of 12, and it was really, really compelling, and nobody felt at all like it was going too personal. It's your choice, as Evie said. So I just think that in terms of even being sort of some simple ways to do things that say I care, but at a very basic level, letting employees know there are these supports. And man, that is so easy for any manager, supervisor, what have you, to do, and to themselves to become aware of what those are, and sort of up their knowledge and awareness. So that really, we're trying to take the positive approach to say that most employers are really great employers. They pride themselves on being great employers. And most people who work for the employers are good people at heart. And but we want to help make sure that the few bad apples are not spoiling it for the rest, and creating toxic environments that no one should have to suffer through.
Beautiful. I love that. That's such a good way to conclude. We are coming close to 11 o'clock, so we will cut it short. If anyone has any final words, I'd be happy for you just to share those. But if not, I think this was a really good conversation. I particularly enjoyed it because it didn't feel like a daunting conversation around sexual harassment. It was a really positive, forward-thinking conversation with good tips and support. And I think all you guys should come together, make a company, and watch everyone just flock to you. So thank you so much for joining us. I am just going to plug that we are selling business award tickets for the 2022 Business Awards hosted at the Convention Center in person. So you can purchase those through our website. But ladies, it was an amazing day. Thank you so much. And this will be available on our YouTube channel. But yeah, I hope you guys have a good day and enjoy the sunshine, and this kickstarted your day for a positive, rest of the day and week.
Thank you, Julia. We're very appreciative.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to all the participants.
Awesome. All right. Bye, guys.
See you later.
Bye.
Cheers.